What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Coach to Coach podcast. And in this episode, I want to talk about the fear around your numbers and the fear around changing your identity and how you are running your business. And this conversation actually comes from a one-on-one I had with an accountant. This accountant has been in business for a very long time, more than 15 years accounting, running her own business. And she's been doing accounting since she was 22 years old. And we had a one-on-one. We were talking a lot about how people track their numbers inside of their business. And I've done a couple of episodes already talking about the numbers that you should be tracking inside of your practice or your business to make sure that, of course, you're staying on track. That being said, the conversation took a completely different turn where she was talking about being able to refer. How do I get people to come to you? And I said, well, what seems to be the challenge when you're communicating with these people? And she goes, Andrew, I have a hard enough time convincing them to give me their numbers, let alone having a hard enough time referring you as your business. And I found that that was very interesting. And that's really where the conversation began. And I want to share this conversation with you guys because it was really, really eye-opening for me. And it was also eye-opening for her being the accountant. There are a lot of opportunities inside of your business where you're going to have the chance to change and to grow. But here's the thing, some people don't want to change or don't want to grow. They get to a point in which their business becomes very comfortable. It becomes something that's sustainable. And so sometimes we have to choose and make a very difficult choice between, do I choose comfortability and sustainability, or do I choose to grow, which means that I risk taking apart and breaking all of the stuff that is currently working. And this all relates very well to numbers and tracking numbers inside of your business. When I am speaking to people who maybe haven't tracked their numbers before inside a business, it operates the same way an accountant is really speaking to their client when it comes to trying to get these numbers for business. I ask questions like, how many leads did you get this month? Or how many clients do you have on recurring payments? How many clients did you book in for sessions this week? How many people are you looking to target? And when I'm asking these questions, I'm not asking it because I have a personal opinion. I'm not here looking to judge you on what the number is or what it isn't. I'm just looking for info so then I can use it to calculate whatever decisions we need to make. And it's the same thing with accountants and bookkeepers. These people are here to simply take account of the numbers. They're there to take a look and say, hey, where are your numbers at? So I can then do stuff for payroll, so I can do stuff for taxation, so I can file your books and just make sure that you're current and you're up to date. This is going to allow you to make better decisions. And yet, just like this accountant shared with me, whenever she asks people questions, sometimes it's the same answers in which I get with people when I'm asking them questions. And it goes a lot like this. It's like, how many leads did you get this month? And it's like, well, the one person wasn't a lead, but like if you take this person into account, and all of a sudden you start hearing people generating stories. And usually when I hear people start to generate stories before generating a number, it's usually because energetically they feel a certain way about that number. Maybe they don't like how many leads they've gotten. Maybe they don't like how many people they signed on versus how many people they got in terms of consultations. Maybe they don't like how much they're charging. And this is where I can really discover what the pain point is inside of their business. If someone is hesitant to give me the reoccurring revenue number, but they've given me all the other numbers, that means they don't really like what their recurring revenue is at. If someone hesitates to share what their marketing budget is, or if someone doesn't know a specific number, they probably don't know it because they're trying to avoid the number instead of actually addressing the real challenge in their business. And this is where it's like we know instinctually where we need to look, and we're avoiding looking there because we don't want to feel a negative way about it. And the same thing is true with accounting. So this woman was sharing with me, she's like, Andrew, I can ask someone simple as like, where are you paying your people and how much are you paying them? And then all of the sudden I get runarounds. Well, this week was different and last week was this. And she goes, I know right in that moment that either they're not comfortable with what they're paying or that it is something that is maybe a very unusual thing. And she goes, I don't really care how they're doing it. I just need to know the numbers so that way we can make a decision. And this is where we talk about this fear, we talk about the change of identity and the avoidance of these things that prevents you from being the best business owner. The conversation then started to change into basically with me and her. Why do you think people do that? So her response was, Andrew, I think sometimes people just don't want to look at the information. They are making so many decisions on the day-to-day with their business. They're deciding so many things with how do we market this? How do we promote this? How do I deliver to clients? How do I pay my bills? Where do I have to go for this? And with all of these decision fatigues that they have to make, they get to a place where they're like, well, I just don't really see the value in looking at that. Like me spending time looking at my books or looking at my accounting or seeing what goes in and what goes out, that's just going to be another headache that I don't really need to look at right now. And I can just kick that down the road. And I said, that's very interesting. And she says, why do you think people, when it comes to those numbers, they avoid it or they start getting scared? My take was very, very different. You see, a lot of times in business, we take a lot of risks and a lot of chances up front because we believe that there is unlimited potential. We don't have any context. We don't have a lens. There's not a certain way that we're seeing whether or not it's going to be successful. We're prepared to take the risk and we're prepared to go all in to grow it to a certain point. And then what happens is we start encountering a lot of challenges we weren't prepared for. This is especially true for practitioners, maybe those who were never taught business before, where it's like, okay, I know how to deliver to a client, but now I don't really know what to do to hire an admin. I don't really know what to do when it comes to adding on a secondary service. I don't really know how to hire an additional practitioner. Or now I have a team of 8. I don't really know how to take myself out of the business. And you get to a certain point, there's certain points inside of building a business where you have to change as a person. You have to change as a different type of business owner. 0 to 15K is largely just hustle. Everything goes through you. It evolves around you. K to 20K, you have a small team. You're delegating some things, but you still have a level of trust in which you're not fully trusting the team to do stuff. You're still involved in a lot of it. 25K, 35K, this is where now you're starting to say to yourself, what does the team look like? How do I establish my SOPs and my processes? How do I build the systems to make sure that this is something that can recur month over month? And then, of course, you've got that 40K to 60K, which is now, where are my different services? How do I maximize the length of time I'm keeping a client? How do I maximize how much they're worth? In each and every one of those stages, you're going to have to change your thinking. You're going to have to change your actions. You're going to have to take on new challenges, and you have to be willing to do that. And guess what? Most practitioners and most business owners are not willing to do that. They don't understand what's involved in that. And there's this level of tiredness that someone gets changing the identity. It's not a matter of fatigue making decisions. It's a matter of a willingness to, do I want to grow to this level? And I'll share a perfect example of this with you. When we had our facility location, we hit $1.4 million in revenue. We had a team. I had to make a decision. The decision was, do I double my square footage and then double the expenses and take a very, very big risk? Do I start to really streamline my team? Do I pivot and add online services? I had to make decisions that were going to require significant changes. Changes in the way that I ran my business, like my model. Changes in my team, the way that they're showing up or even getting rid of some people, bringing on some new ones. And then I had to change. The way I was showing up every day had to be different. And the question became, did I want to become that person? Because there are a lot of people who are very content being solopreneurs. I've talked about this several times, where they have a business, everything revolves around them, and they're growing. Usually I don't see a lot of those people because we only focus on people who have the larger teams, 5 members and above, and effectively they're growing their clinics, they're growing their facilities. They want to take themselves out of the business. But there's stages to taking yourself out of the business. And the illusion with, having a bookkeeper and accountant is really the same illusion of working with a coach. A lot of the times we are under this understanding that I just want to hire someone and I want to offload it to them. I want to give them 100% of the responsibility. You can't do that. There's no such thing as a business that manages itself. There's no such thing as a business that doesn't involve you, where you collect a paycheck and everyone else does the work. Unless you're at that 20 million to 15 million range where you've got a portfolio of businesses, even business owners I know that are making 8 million to 15 million a year, they're still heavily involved in their business. The structure looks different. They've got operating managers. They have people reporting to them, but they're still doing stuff every single day working on their business. And you have to ask yourself, at what level does it become comfortable and safe? And at what level do you say, this is where I'm comfortable at. This is where I want to stay inside of my business. So going back to the accountant, there are a lot of people, especially new to business. Now, you guys listening aren't new to business. You've been in here, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. You know that hey, you can't just give something to someone and extend. But she comes across a lot of people who, once they give the books, they're like, well, I just want you to do it for me. I want you to find the information for me. I want you to fill out the taxation stuff for me. I want you to do all of this. And really, I don't want to look at it ever again. They're deferring responsibility. And by doing that, they're actually giving away too much power that prevents them from growing and scaling their business. And lo and behold, those are the people and her clients that struggle the most. When she's looking at their numbers, they're stagnant month over month. And when she tries to give them suggestions, they're not open to it. They're not open to it because in the back of their mind, they know that they need to change. They just don't want to own that change. They're so focused on being this person day to day in being inside the work that they don't want to take a step back and say, this might involve me breaking down this whole house of cards and building it again so it's actually going to last. And this is the toughest part where, she calls it decision fatigue. I call it identity fatigue. It is one of the most challenging parts in business. Business is going to ask you to grow, and you're going to have to change in more ways than just delivering better client care. So when you're looking at your business, this is where you have to start thinking, what are the decisions that maybe I'm putting on the back burner? What are the areas in which maybe I'm avoiding, I know need to be changed, but I want to pretend that number doesn't exist. I don't really want to look at it. I don't want to talk about it with my coach. So as I was having this conversation with her, we kind of took the conversation in a couple of different areas. The first thing is she was like, well, how can I make people more open to you and more open to the process? And this is where I shared this whole aspect of being situation aware, problem aware, or solution aware. And this is actually something that you can use inside of your business as well too for your clients. Most of the time, we spend a lot of time trying to convince people that they need to change. What you're talking about in that moment is situation aware person. A situation aware person doesn't really know that what is going on inside of their world is a problem. These are the types of clients that see 15 pounds go up on the scale and they're like, my weight went up. That's kind of weird. Or who've had bloating for 3 or 4 months and they go, wow, I feel really bloated. There's a challenge that's there. They're recognizing something is different, but they're not fully processing it. They're not actually aware enough to see it as something that is a concern. We cannot convince people that they need to take action on something that is not registering as a concern for them. So then we talk about the next level person. The next level person is a problem aware person. These are the type of people who say, I've seen 10 pounds go up and my weight's never gone up before. This could be a problem. This is the type of person who now has an awareness. The challenge with awareness is sometimes you can be aware that a problem exists, but not be aware of what the solution is. And think about this in your business. How many times have you taken a look and been like, my marketing is not working? You know that's the problem, but you're like, I don't know what the hell to fix. So you don't have the solution. It's a very painful place to be. Or you're signing on clients, you're bringing on people to work with, but you can't keep them and people are falling off and you don't know what part of the client delivery is causing that issue. That's a challenge. Maybe you're doing all the work to generate leads and then for some reason they're not converting into clients and you don't know what's wrong. Is it the pre-qualification process? Is it the actual ad? Do I need a better salesperson? Do I need to change the way I'm presenting my services? It can be a very frustrating place. And if you stay in the place of I'm experiencing the problems, but I don't have the solution, you start going back and saying, I don't even want to look at the problem anymore. I'm going to try to outwork it, out hustle it. I'm going to try to focus on something different in hopes that either the problem will go away or in hopes that I will forget about the problem. And this is where maybe like some of your clients, you just hire on random people or you start doing random things. Let me just give my marketing to an agency. Hopefully they'll fix the problem for me. Let me just get a hiring agency to find my next practitioner or my next coach because they'll handle the problem. Maybe I'll just fire the person doing the client delivery and fill their role temporarily. Maybe that'll fix the issue. It never does. If you're talking to a situation-aware person, we have to educate them of the problem. If we talk to a problem-aware person, we have to help bridge the gap of what the possible solution is going to be. And this is where that accountant then was like, holy shit, I've never heard of this before. So instead of talking about the problem over and over again, hey, I'm seeing you're spending a crazy amount of dollars on marketing that's not working. Hey, I see that you're spending $4,000 on this and this is a problem. Instead of hyper-focusing on the problem, we start talking about the bridge to the gap. Hey, I really think you need to speak to a coach. Hey, I really think there's something that's here that we can make an adjustment for. And this is where then you create someone that's called a solution-aware person. A solution-aware person is the person, great example for your clients, is a person who has a struggle with weight, is actively working on weight loss, knows that nutrition is a part of the process, knows that training is a part of the process, knows that rehabilitation is a part of the process, so that way they can work on not just losing the weight, but keeping the weight down. Or someone who has back pain, where they're recognizing, hey, it's not just get rid of the back pain, it's also strengthen the muscles around this, which means that I have to have ongoing treatment. They're so aware of it that they're also now aware of who do they need to look for. Do I need to look for a physiotherapist? Do I need to look for a nutritionist? What is the next step in my journey that I need to focus on? And they partner with the right professionals. The same is true for you in your business. There are areas where you're saying to yourself, I've tried the random marketing, hasn't worked. I've tried bringing on individual contractors to kind of act as fill-ins. It hasn't worked. Maybe now I need to have a dedicated coach that steps in like a CFO for my business and actually helps me create the training processes, the systems, the right content, and the right tools. So when I do things like market and actually try to deliver my services, people are going to sign up and they're going to stay. When you create a situation-aware person, you're creating a person who has the tools, the knowledge, and the capability to look for the solution of the problem. In order for someone to be a solution-aware person, guess what? They have to have an openness and willingness to change and grow. And this is what makes you a good client for an accountant. This is what makes you a good fit for coaching. All of our clients inside of the C2C program have an openness and willingness to grow. They're not afraid to share their numbers because they're like, listen, whether the numbers are good or bad, they're going to change once I share them with you because we're going to come up with a plan. They don't provide the stories or the runaround or the excuses as to why something is the way it is. They say, this is the way I'm doing it now, and I'm open to change. It's the same thing when it comes to your books. The clients who are the most successful know their numbers. They're sharing their books with their accountants. They're regularly having meetings. What are my expenses? What am I spending on? What is my static and fixed costs? What is reoccurring? So that way I can strategize better. And they have all of their books updated regularly, so they're making decisions on a month-to-month basis, not looking at old data from 6 months ago, trying to then make decisions in the now. But you have to have an openness and willingness to grow. And so what I shared with her is you have to know how to move people between situation aware to problem aware to solution aware. Because you're going to have clients and you're going to have patients that are all in completely different areas. Some people need to learn about what the problem is. Others need to see that there's a solution. And then your highest level people need to be shown that you are the solution. And that if they take X, Y, and Z step or join your specific process, that's how they're going to see the results. So just like in your business, you have to be willing to change the identities. It's also, you have to have an openness and willingness to make those shifts and continue to adjust. So I shared that with her, and then we started talking about our relationships, our personal lives, how we've had the openness and willingness to grow. And I should actually do an episode of C2C with her because she's very straightforward. I freaking love her. She's got the best energy. She just says it how it is. And I think when you're in business for that long, and she also has a very long-term relationship as well. She's been married for 27 years, right? You don't get there by being closed-minded. You don't get there by saying, I'm only going to do it my way, the same way. You get there by basically paying to learn. And she said something really, really great, which I want to share with you guys, is everything in life has what's called a school fee. And I was like, a school fee? How many times did you go to school? She goes, no, not how many times did you go to school. How many times did you pay to learn a lesson or learn something that you're never going to do again? And I was like, tell me more about this school fee. She was like, well, when I first started my business, I hired a marketing agency because I just didn't want to learn. And what I discovered very quickly, and the only lesson I learned from that marketing agency was I need to figure out how to market. So when I do hire someone, I know enough to know if they're doing it right. Shit, that's a huge level of ownership. It meant that she had to grow enough to learn marketing, and then she was able to hand it off. She was like, then I ended up paying a school fee for my first hire, where I hired someone just being solely reactive. Let me just fill the role. And I didn't make sure that they were the right fit. And they actually ended up performing very poorly for my clients. And those clients left. That loss in revenue was my school fee. I learned very quickly that I had to be patient with hiring. And as she was saying this stuff, I was like, holy crap, I've paid a lot of school fees. And I think you do in business. That's very normal. I've paid $600, $700 school fees. I've paid $40,000 school fees. And as I was looking, I was like, wow, I've hired mentors and coaches that the main thing that I learned is not to do that. And that's okay. That's a part of the process. I brought on team members that haven't worked out. I've tried different marketing initiatives that didn't work. I've tried creating content and curated and bringing on professionals that I didn't see the return of investment on. And so what happens is, as you become open and willing to try new things, you grow as a professional to the point where you start to know what's working in my industry. What are the things that I need to be focused on? Where should my energy, time, and attention be? And what ends up happening is the most successful business owners, the one who run multi-practice clinics, the ones who run large facilities or who have teams that have a full structure and a full system and process, these people are no longer looking at I'm going to be afraid of the number or I'm going to be afraid of spending money. What they're always looking at this point is how much of my time is being taken versus how much of my money is being spent. And I look at this all the time. Great example of this was last week. I had an issue at the rental property. There was a leaky faucet. And normally people go, oh man, well, you're going to hire a plumber. That's going to be an easy $400 call. I don't look at it like that. I look at it like this. I say to myself, well, if a plumber's going to charge me $400 for this fix, the question does not become what is the cost of this plumber. The question becomes what is my time versus the cost? Because it's an hour to drive there. It's an hour to drive back. It's 30 minutes to look at the problem. It's another 30 minutes to drive to Rona or a local hardware store to go and look at the actual part itself. And then I have to think to myself, am I the actual right person to fix this? Or am I going to make the problem worse and then incur the cost of learning, which is like incur a school fee of screwing this up? Now, ultimately, that drive for me, I made that decision. It was a $60 part. It took me 10 minutes to replace. So 2 hours in, that was an effective use of time. And it happened on a weekend. It wasn't an emergency. But if it happened on a Tuesday and I was in between calls, it would have been like this. I would have made the decision and say, boom, plumber, go out there. I don't even care if it's a $60 part, because my time while I'm building my business is what's making me money. This is where you have to look at the operation cost. So when it comes to things like being afraid to share your numbers, being afraid to have hard conversations in your team, being afraid to grow to the next level and change the identity, the question is not like, how much money can I save with this? The question is really like, how much money are you losing by not doing this? What is your opportunity cost? What is it costing you to stay stagnant in your business? What is it costing you to keep your business the same month over month and not get a single client? What are you losing in terms of time with your family, time going on vacations, or other experiences, you being able to take on new hobbies? What are the opportunities you're losing on still being the one staying inside of your business? When you start looking at those things, you say to yourself, oh shit, I can't afford to stay stagnant. I can't afford to be hesitant on my numbers. And this is where you then start stepping in. Like I shared with the accountant, I mean, the first 6.5 years of my business, it took 6.5 years to get to 440,000 inside of my business. And it was a lot of fear. I don't want to take that on. I don't want to spend the money. I'm worried about hiring this person. How can I make the money back? Everything was from a fear-based mindset. I was afraid to share numbers with coaches. I was afraid to share expenses with other people. I was afraid to invest in things. And then there got to a point where I was like, shit, I'm hitting a ceiling in terms of time, energy, and attention because it all goes through me. And that's when I made the decision of, I don't just want to be this person running the facility. I want a facility that runs itself. From 6.5 years to 8 years, 1.5 years, from that 440, we went 1.4 million in revenue. What was the difference? I started treating my time and my energy and my effort like it was more valuable than the money I was making. I also started being open and willing to people with feedback, more honest with my accountants, more direct with my lawyers, more open with my clients. Hey, look, we're increasing prices because this is what it is. I was more open with my team. Here's the goals. Here's where we have to hit in order for this to make sense. And in being more transparent, I started stepping higher into different levels of identity. No surprise, I went from being the practitioner to the manager, from the manager to the business owner. This is where you're CEO level. This is where you're making decisions and they're impacting the whole chain, where you have a team that actually trusts what you're doing. Like, we can all be that open. We can all be that transparent. And really, if you think about it, what do you have to lose by being that open? Like, the mystery and why I was so curious listening to her talk about the people who hesitate to share numbers. When you know your numbers, you make better decisions. When you understand where something is too high or too low, it's that sobering reality that gives you the fire to move and change. Great example of this, started working with a client, and I don't think he realized this, but we were calculating his cost per acquisition. He spent about $8,800 in ads. Fine, everyone has different ad spend. He generated it was over 100 leads, 120, something like that. And then he only got 8 signups. And it was like, oh, okay, so did you know that each and every one of those clients cost you $1,100? Did you sign them up for more than $1,100? And he was like, no, shit. The sobering reality is he was spending way too much on his ads and he had a pre-qualification issue. Right in that moment, he goes, I'm never going to make that mistake again. He realized what the school fee was. The school fee was he was paying $1,100 to get one person. And when that person came in through his door, they were not paying him $1,100. So how many missed opportunities are existing in your business or even in your life simply because you're afraid to share or you're afraid to step into a new level of identity? And guess what? The only way up is through. You have to move through that. Your identity cannot stay the same. It has to change. Just like your numbers cannot stay the same in the business, they have to change. And guess what? You'll have high months, you'll have low months, you'll have team members that leave, you'll have people that take your clients, you'll have all of that fun stuff. But you know what? If you look over the span of your business journey, it's always going to trend upwards and it's always going to trend onwards. And that's really the difference I find. Like a lot of the clients I'm working with, they've been in business for longer than 4 years. And at that point, you really start to get an understanding of how quickly to move on things. And you start to develop a thick skin where it's like, look, they're lessons. I learned the lesson. I move forward and I just continue to improve. So that's why I wanted to make this episode, because I really wanted to showcase where can you change the identity? Where can you lean into a higher level so you can grow past the person you are? And then where can you be more open, be more aware of your numbers, more open with the challenges that are going on? And I'll tell you, and I'll finish off the episode with this, the area in which you have the most unknown, that's usually the area you're trying to avoid. So if you don't know your numbers, it's because you don't want to look at your numbers. If you don't know how to sell, it's because you have a fear of selling. If you don't really know what your team is doing, it's because you have conflict of being a good manager or actually having those conversations with your team. And whether that's a conscious thing or a subconscious thing, that's where you either have to sit with a coach like me and really work through that. Why am I trying to push away or pull away from this? Or you have to start asking yourself some tough questions, like where am I trying to postpone the growth just so that way I can keep what I have in this moment? Because I think sometimes we all fall into this trap where it's like it's easier for us to maintain what we have than it is for us to try and reach for something new and risk this already running machine. But here's what I'll say to that. You know in your heart you are not content with where you are. So in reality, if you're not content with where you are anyways, you're going to have to change. And there's a greater risk in staying the same than there is a greater risk of growing. So that is all for this episode, guys. Thank you so much for watching another episode of C2C. Make sure, of course, you like and subscribe to the podcast. And with that as well, too, I'm also going to be dropping the link to the new series that we're going to be running live every single Friday at 12:30 p.m. EST. Haven't thought of a name yet, but when a name comes up, you guys are going to be the first to know. I encourage you, of course, to share this episode with other professionals in the health and wellness industry, too. Let them know that there is room for them to grow. Thanks, guys, for listening, and we will see you on the next one. Bye.